Kufyud Aleph, this is the Maimer Sheni, second essay on Kedusha, called Kedoshim Tiyu B'Sur Meira. This is having Kedusha on the aspect of Sur Meira, staying away from the bad. In letter Aleph, the Rebbe explained to us the importance and the impact of the midah we call Yesod, which is Kedusha. Just as in, let's say, medical science will teach us the importance of different parts of the human being and their impact on the body, and what is really central and significant to the life of a person, and what's less. In letter Aleph, the Rebbe explains the centrality and the importance of Kedusha in the life of a Jew, and he compares it to the lave, to the heart. It's just as the heart is that which is giving life to the person, it's pumping blood to the person, is giving them life, so too the midah of Yesod, of Kedusha, is literally the life blood and the most central force that his ruchnius life depends on. So in light of that, the Rebbe will teach us then in letter Beis some very, very dramatic teachings of Chazal in this regard that are sometimes could be perhaps shocking, but when one understands the preface to it, that Kedusha is central to the person's ruchnius life, like the lave, like the heart, then you can understand these teachings of Chazal. Then they will not seem to you, God forbid, as exaggerated or something we don't understand, but actually we understand them quite well. So he says in letter Beis, in light of everything we've said, after lahavin ma'ro al kacha Chazal, you could possibly understand what Chazal saw fit, shefligu begodel chomer hapagam shalmidazu, that they spoke in great great terms about the severity of damage in this area. Yoser mikol ha'averos ha'chamura shebatorah, and they spoke more strongly about the midah of Yesod and Kedusha than other averos that are severe. We don't find in other places, in other midos, that Chazal use these types of expressions. So, for example, like the Gemara says in Nida, Yashav lo kotz lamata mitibura. The Gemara says that Rabbi Tarfon held that if a thorn enters below the navel of the person, it says tibaka kreso va'al yera lever shachas, better that his stomach will explode and he should not descend to like a pit. So the Gemara explains there that Rabbi Tarfon said that the thorn enters below the navel of the person, they should not use their hands to remove the thorn, but they should only use an instrument, because when one moves his hand in that area of the body, they can come to chimum, to exciting the body, chas v'shalom, and to a pagam, a blemish in Yesod. And so they use this term, better that the person's stomach should explode than a person should put his hands below the navel area. Even though his intention isn't for anything bad, but rather simply to remove the thorn, because they were so concerned about something that's in the proximity of arayos, Chazal were more stringent Ad she'amru afilu tibaka kresa. To the point that, in other words, even if a person is in greater pain, that's what it means, until he's able to find an instrument to remove it, better that than the person should try to alleviate the pain and come to Aveira. V'yav shepikuach nefesh docha kol yisurim shebatorah, even though pikuach nefesh deflects all yisurim of the Torah, yamos v'al yirad leber shachas. Better a person would die and not go down to Gehenna. Also, we find Chazal say the following teaching: Mishanasan einav be'isha, someone that gazes at a woman, v'chala, and because of that, that attachment, that desire for her, so he bodily becomes sick. V'nota lamos, and he actually is near death. Yamos, the Gemara says, better he should die. V'al yidaber ima afilu achorei hagader. You shouldn't speak to her even behind the fence. So the Rambam explains this in more detail. It says like this: Misha nasan einav be'isha, someone that gazes at a woman, v'chala v'nata lamas, and he becomes bodily sick and he is near his death. V'amru harofim, the doctors tell him, ein lo refuah, he will have no healing ad shetibalo, unless he lives with her. So the Gemara says, and the Rambam rules, yamos, he should die. V'al tibalo, you shouldn't have relations with her. Okay, that's straightforward based upon what Chazal teach us, that when it comes to Gilui Arayos, the forbidden relations, that a person should die before doing that Aveira. But the Gemara says, and the Rambam rules, afilu haisa penuya, even if this woman is someone that's not married, which would not be included in a Gilui Arayos according to the Torah, living with an unmarried woman. But the Gemara says further, "Fa'afilu ledaber ima me'achorei hagader." Even if speaking with her behind the fence in some way can alleviate the bodily harm that he's in, ein moran lo bekach. We don't rule for him to do that. The yamas, and better he should die. V'lo yoru ledaber ima me'achorei hagader. In other words, the chacham will not rule for him that he's allowed to do such a thing, even though he may do it on his own. We will not rule it and encourage it. Why? So Gemara says, "Shelo yu benos Yisrael hefker," in order that the daughters of Israel, in other words, Jewish women, should not just become hefker, and free for anyone. V'yavo b'dvarim eilu lifrotz barayos, and this will lead to a breach in arayos. So in other words, in order to safeguard arayos, even though in halacha this would not be the case where a person would have to die, nevertheless, in order to maintain the kedusha and prevent the breach in arayos, the Gemara says, and the Rambam rules, that that is the correct practice. Okay, so the Rebbe says in the bottom, "Upasla kena Rambam lahalacha." Rambam rules this lahalacha because of shafilu penuya adin kain, even if the woman is unmarried. The Shamba nida there in Gemara nida amru Chazal ba'aflagas ha'isser. Chazal say in speaking about the severity of the isser arayos, shahari zeh ka'oved avodah zara k'mo shofech damim. It's like idolatry. It's like murder. A person is obligated to death by the hand of heaven. Further, we find the Chazal emphasize greatly the isser of histaklos, of gazing at a woman. We also find how great Chazal spoke regarding the isser, the prohibition of histaklos, the gazing at a woman. She'amru al pasuk, Chazal say on the pasuk in Yeshaya, "Va'odsem einav miraos bara." He closes his eyes from seeing that which is bad. On this pasuk, the Gemara says, Amar Rav Chama bar Abba, Zeh she'eino mistakel b'nashim ha'omdos al hakvisa. This pasuk can be applied to a circumstance, to a person that does not gaze at women who are standing or crouching by the river washing the clothing. The Gemara says there that when women would go to the river to wash the clothing, so they would expose their expose their arms. So Chama bar Abba said that to close your eyes from seeing bad is speaking even in a circumstance where the women are just doing a practice for a housekeeping chore, and the person should keep his eyes from simply gazing at the exposed arms of a woman. So the Gemara says, and explain this, that's not the full description of what's occurring here. The Gemara says, Hey Chidami, what's the case here? If the person has another means of traveling, in other words, a different road by which to get to where he wants to, so then by taking the road that takes him by the women that are washing the clothing, he's called a Rasha. Perisha Rashbam, the Rashbam explains, Rashahu, he's considered a Rasha, Afal pi sha'otzem einav, even though he closes his eyes. So why? Why Chazal call him a Rasha? Call him a Rasha. And here he is, that he's doing proper Shemiras Einayim. So Rashbam says the explanation is Shelo haya lo lihiskarev el lisrachik min avera, because he should not put himself in proximity of avera, he should distance himself. And so therefore a person who doesn't take who takes the road that puts him in proximity, even though he does an act of kedusha by not looking, Chazal consider him to be a Rasha for taking that path and putting himself in proximity and closeness to Avera. Okay, Amina, the Gemara says in different light, has a principle, harchek min akid, stay away from that which is disgusting. So these are principles, and these are teachings from Chazal that give us a proper impression of something that would be an Isser itself in halacha, of histaklus, of gazing, but with Chazal you get the impression of the severity of it, and even in the circumstance of a person's maintaining the halacha, in the eyes of Chazal and how they saw how severe this is, they give an appellation to the person because of the circumstance he puts himself in. It's also based on what Chazal say. Al pasuk tov mara einayim mehalach nafesh. So pasuk says that sometimes looking in self is better, more beneficial for the person than even action. So the Gemara says shekasha histaklus migufa shel aveira, that it's more severe in a certain aspect, gazing, than doing the aveira itself. There are many reasons why that is so. The Chazal consider histaklus in certain aspects to be more severe than the aveira itself. This reflects how severe Chazal saw all aspects of this Isser, including that which is histaklus, gazing. Chazal were very severe even in thought. They said in the pasuk, the Torah says that you should guard yourself from anything bad. So the pasuk there is speaking there about the war camp, and the pasuk says that a person should keep himself from any davar ra, and if a person has some sort of a mission, he has to leave the camp. So Chazal darshan on this, v'nishmarta mikol davar ra, that you should guard yourself from that which is bad. Shelo yahar bayom v'yavu detuma balayla. That a person shouldn't think and involve himself in fantasies during the day that will bring to tumah at night. In other words, the Torah is commanding a shmira, a guarding. And the guarding is that a person not allow himself to engage in being involved in fantasies in the day, which would just bring out the mela automatically tumah at night. And so therefore the shmira is the tzivoy, the mitzvah, that a person is to keep himself from thoughts that will just bring about tumah. Says the Rebbe, we don't find, when it's rare, that the Torah gives us isurim on hirur, prohibitions on thinking. So usually the Torah, and the emphasis of the Torah is on the deed, on the action, right? Sometimes on the speaking. It's very rare that the Torah, it gives us isurim itself on the hirur. Of course, in every aveira, there's aspects of thought, and that too can be considered something close to the aveira, and a pagam, a blemish. But that the Torah gives an actual isser, a prohibition on the hirur, is very rare. You find it only in a few circumstances. Torah talk about lo sachmo, desiring another person's property, every surim, and avodah zara, of thinking, but it's rare. Usually the Torah will place the isurim on an action like speaking or on doing. Here, when it comes to arayos, so the Torah puts a prohibition on hirur, on engaging in forbidden thought. The Kan Yesh Poskim.
What's the difference between hirur and machshava?
That's a good thought, good question. Machshava could mean just a thought that a person has. A hirur means that a person is involved, be more involved in a fantasy. In other realms, the Chazal may use the term hirur to be something fleeting.
I remember reading it in the Mishnah. If a person was a bal keri, he has to think the Shemai.
That's right. That's right.
Say it is. Okay.
The Kan Yeshvos here, there are those that rule ki over below tasa mishum shelo yahar bayom, that the Torah isn't simply telling us that a person shouldn't do something that will lead to something else. So therefore, in a sense, it's like a gather, it's a fence. But that we see this as actually a lo tasa, that it's a prohibition, and a person should keep himself from thinking in the day which will bring about the action at night. So here we find in the area of arayos, where Chazal spoke very emphatically and very strongly about the isser itself, the prohibition itself of arayos, of relationships, of looking, of thinking. And so it covers many, many aspects of the person's connection to this aveira. So there is like this. The reason is this. Ki kedushas Yehudi hi nishmaso haruchanis. The kedusha of the Jew is his whole spiritual self. Uvazat tuluya devekuso b'chelek halukamimal. And in it, the whole devekus depends. So just like the heart is giving life to the body, so yesod is a foundation and is essential for the Ruchni Yisrael. Not just a thing or another idea, but it's yesod, it's foundational to the Ruchnius of the person. And the dveikus, the attachment, depends on it. The Yisa Maharizal, that Rizal says, Shekesha Adam Nitma, when a person becomes tamei, nishmaso mistalakas mimenu. His soul, or let's say aspects of it, becomes distant and removed from him. In other words, the neshama of the person, right, is the source of the person, and that's source in Hashem. So that is what gives us the kashar, our connection to Hashem. When tumah happens to the person, is that there's a distance that occurs between the neshama, the source of the person, and the person themselves. So therefore, a tumah, a blockade, occurs when that tumah happens and the dveikus is interrupted. Only through immersion in the mikvah, other acts of tahara, of purity, can a person remove those blockades and then re-find and replace himself into the direct kasher, the connection. This is neshama rooted in Hashem. So that's also why, that sometimes a person will be lax in the area. I'll say, well, it doesn't really bother me. I'm not really affected by it because I see it all the time and it doesn't do anything to me. That actually may be an indication of the distance and the mechitza, the barrier that's already been created. It's true, you don't feel it, but not because it doesn't bother you, but because that mechitza, that barrier is set in already, and you don't sense that there's any distance. You cease to feel the kasher, the connection between the living person and the neshama. So it's not an indication of, in a sense, it doesn't bother me, I'm unaffected by it. It's actually maybe an indication of not having a hergish, of not feeling. In a sense, like, it's maybe dead skin. Maybe a good muscle for a tummy. Maybe a good muscle for that. Yeah. Like
play guitar.
Yeah.
Develop calluses in the tips of your fingertips. You can't feel anything anymore in the tips of the fingers. You can even touch fire. And it doesn't hurt. Unless the rest of the fingers feel it. But if it's just the tips of the fingers, you don't even feel it. It doesn't hurt. It would be damaging.
Damage, you don't feel it.
Right.
What do they call calluses?
Yeah. Is
it related to the word callus?
Yeah.
In as much as Chazal were very machmir in this area, so even more so in the derech of Chasidus, they place an even a greater emphasis on the impact of a pagam, the blemish of kedusha. They saw in this everything. This is the vision and the makeup of the whole person. So now it's very important, is to go to understand for ourselves and to be able to teach others that you could only appreciate the chumrah, the stringency on something, is if you can understand the fundamental of that thing itself. The more that a person has an appreciation for the impact of Kedusha and what it means, then a person has a greater understanding of the chumrah, of the severity that Chazal placed in it, in halacha, and also in hashkafa. Without that appreciation, so then it strikes the person as being, like sort of out there, very difficult to understand, and very machmir, certainly. But in a similar way that we take the heart very seriously, because we know what the heart does for the human body, it's pasha, and we know what the damages that the heart has, how it impact the life of the person, and no one makes a joke out of that. The same way. If we understand what the kedusha is to the ruchnius of the person, then it's not a light matter. It becomes very serious, and we then can put into a framework all these different teachings of Chazal in hashkafa and halacha.
Say on that with the heart. A lot of people do that. You get a diagnosis for some heart problem. Stop eating vegetables. Eat vegetables only. Working out at certain hours of the day. Don't eat after this time. They go overboard. Diet changes. Everything. Become really because of the heart. That's true.
I wonder, thinking about the mihar hair, it connects it in the Mishnah to, it says mihar hair libo.
Yeah.
In his heart.
Yeah.
His thought in the heart. So I wonder if mihar hair and makshava is more just up here, and also he has the intention in his heart for the mahar hair. I don't know if that's, but it seems that it also connects to Shema, where it says to go straight out to your heart and your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that it's talking about the mahar hair, is that person's, not only does he see something and it has a thought, but now he's starting to really, and he builds that desire for the person even in his heart.
I mean, it reflects already a deepened thought.
Right.
Yeah.